Well, hello there, listeners. It's Marcus here for one of our final shows in the branding photography season. And I've brought in an expert for this show. I've brought in Jessica Hanlon, um, who's based over in Sweden, I believe. And she, as I said, is a personal branding photography expert. Hi there, Jessica. How you doing?
Hi, thank you. I'm good. I am in Sweden. I'm based in
Yes.
Stockholm, and I'm actually from the US, so I'm not
Oh,
Swedish.
okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
How long have you been in Sweden for then?
So I moved to Sweden in 2015, and when I moved to Sweden, I had like an 10-month-old and a 3-year-old.
Oh, wow.
So I had my hands full,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I had just been thinking about photography as a career, but I never actually did anything about it. I just always was taking pictures since I was the
Yes.
age of 12.
Oh, wow. Yep.
And when I was in Sweden, I got asked to do behind the scene photos for Maria Nilla, which is a hair care product here in Sweden. And it just kind of was an opportunity that landed in my lap. And I was like, really? You want to pay me for taking pictures? Like somebody actually is asking me to do this. And so I had to open up a business account because they were like, well, we need to pay you this and this and that. I knew nothing about starting a business in Sweden, like absolutely nothing. Everything was in
Mm.
Swedish, like setting up the tax, everything. I was just like completely lost. And I was asking my Swedish husband how do I do this? And he was also like, I don't know, like I get
Oh,
my accountant to do all
no
this stuff for
use.
me. And I was like, I'm like, okay. So he did help me, but it was still like I was clueless. And that's how I started my business here in Sweden.
Right
And
off.
yeah, so I didn't speak Swedish. I didn't know anybody. I had no network other than just like this one person that gave me this opportunity, which was the starting point of like where I am today. So yeah.
Well, you obviously like a challenge. Did you get into personal brand photography straight away? Was that something that you just were drawn towards?
Well, like most photographers, I think we all start off
Hmm.
shooting
Yeah,
everything.
in the
And
early
that's kind of
days.
what I did. Yeah. So I started off actually with what I had, like the network I had, or whatever people I met. So in the beginning, since I was a mother, I was like, okay, I can do maternity. I can shoot weddings. I can shoot kids. So yeah, I was starting off with that. But then I was like, okay, I don't like photographing children. That I just knew, like, even though I have kids myself, I just knew how hard it was. And I was like, this is not for me. I'm not finding joy in this. So I'm not going to do this. And I loved maternity. And I thought, like, wow, it's so amazing to be able to capture this beautiful body and this and that. So I did that for a while. And then eventually I discovered personal branding. And I was like, wow, I love this. Actually, my background is in graphic design, and
Aha.
that's what I
Okay.
studied in university.
Right.
And I was like, actually, I understand this really well because as a graphic designer, you do pretty much the same thing, trying to
Indeed.
discover what the person's brand is
Yep.
about and then
Yep.
creating logos and typeface, all sorts of things. So for me, that just made total sense. And so I started going in that direction. And I started learning everything I could about branding itself, about marketing. And I just got really obsessed with it. And so in
Yeah.
Sweden, nobody was really doing that. I think there were like two other photographers in Stockholm shooting this, but we all had different photography styles, which was great because I mean,
Yeah.
every
Right.
person that comes to us is coming to us for a reason. Either they like our photography style or they just kind of connected with us. And I think that is the key to being a good brand photographer is like being different than your competitor. Because really, if you follow what other people are photographing and you make it look exactly like the person down the road, it's really hard for people to choose you as the photographer. And to me, that was like really important to figure out like what my photography style was and what made me different. And so
Excellent. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really important to know when you are starting out in this industry because I think that's really going to help you to stand out, but also connect with people who want your specific photography style. So it's about learning to become very self aware of who you are, excuse me, and learning how to um, stand out in your own way. So basically, that's what
Yeah.
branding is. So you have to really do a lot of self discovery. And I think that's the thing when people even start businesses and they come to you as like looking for a photographer, they also don't know. But the thing is they've missed all the branding foundations of like what it means to actually run this business, like what they're about and why they started it. So I think there's so many things that you have to learn about personal branding to be able
True.
to guide people and also do it yourself. So that
Yeah.
is the key. If you are not like building a personal brand as a personal branding photographer, it's really hard to connect and understand what people are going through when it comes to actually putting yourself out there and being visible and creating images that stand out for the website or for social media. So I think that is really important for you to know as a brand
Exactly.
photographer.
Exactly. Jay, do you know what? I think you summed up it all in those few sentences there. I think that's it. Show over and out. No, but seriously, I
No,
have
there's
got some
so much
questions.
more to talk
Yeah,
about.
I have got some questions just to dig a bit deeper. Let's start off with those, even though I think you've summed it up superbly already. Let's just go back over what you said. So personal branding can easily become about aesthetics, like you said, nice lighting, nice outfits, nice locations. But how do you make sure you're actually capturing the identity rather than just the style?
Yeah, and I think this is the hardest part. Um, because I feel like a lot of photographers struggle with this. This is why we see so many photo shoots that look so similar, right?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
kind of go to the basics, and it's really about diving deeper into what people do, but also getting to know the person. And like
Yep.
I go and study the person that I'm meeting. So I go and look at their Instagram. I see
Yep.
like how they're presenting themselves,
Yep.
or I look at their competitor and I see like how can we make this person different instead of making them look so similar, because if they look too similar, then it's hard for those people to stand out in their own way, right? Because there's lots of people offering similar things, but we need to find a way to make them different. So it's really about being an investigator and diving in
Nicely put.
into like who this person is, but getting to know their personality. And I call myself a body language reader as like a photographer, because basically we're reading people all the time, right? We can tell if somebody's uncomfortable. We can
Hmm.
tell just in the tension in the body if somebody is like feeling unsafe or they're just not letting go. So we have to like work on getting somebody who's in front of our camera to relax. And sometimes that takes a little bit of work, right? But
Yes.
it's the same thing with personal branding. It's you're learning to read somebody before you even pick up the camera. So it's about reading body language, reading the person's personality, but also hearing what they have to say about their business and how they say it. So some people are really soft in the way they present themselves, right? The way they speak, but the way they dress as well. And then there are people who are a lot more bolder. So you can
Yes.
use those
Yep.
personality traits to bring that out into the photography, into the images, and finding spaces that maybe even reflect like the names of their services, their products. Because some people are more creative with the terminology. Some people have really cool names for some of their workshops and courses or whatever. And you can use that to your advantage when you're coming up with concepts and ideas for a shoot. So I
Hmm.
think it's really important to think about those things, but it's really about diving deeper and finding ways to show somebody what somebody does or the feeling of what somebody does in a unique way.
Yep.
Um,
A
and I
unique
think
way.
that's the hardest part. And that's why we see so much brand photography that looks so similar. You know, you
It,
see it all the time, the same kind of shoots.
It is the
So,
hardest.
yeah,
Yeah, so sorry, it is the
no,
hardest
no.
part, but also that's what makes it so creative. But it's interesting what you're saying there about. I think as a branding photographer, you've got to be able to adapt your style to the person you're photographing. I mean, that's commercial photography, isn't it? So, as you say, if you're photographing somebody who, well, your style. Let's just leave it at that. It's fairly obvious. The
Yeah.
style, you need to be able to adapt your style to depending on the person you're photographing and your approach as well, like you're saying. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean there's nothing wrong with creating something simple or like doing the same things. I'm not saying there's something completely wrong about it. But if we want to push the boundaries of what brand photography can be, I mean there are some people out there really doing a great job that do some really cool photography that has nothing to do, like it's not like the literal translation of what the person's doing.
Uh,
It's like hard to
Yeah. No.
explain without showing it, like examples, like visually.
Well.
But yeah,
I mean, on your website and looking at your images, you do put a strong emphasis on styling. So, how much of a successful shoot is actually about what the client wears versus what the photographer does? How are you influenced by what people are
I think
wearing?
style is really important. I think
Yeah.
that really pulls everything together. In the beginning, when I first started as a brand photographer, I remember this very clearly, and I was so frustrated because, you know, I'm one of these people, like, I want to do something really well. So I would get client and I was like, yes, I'm super excited to photograph this person. And then they would show up and they're like, yeah, I didn't really put much effort. I just grabbed this morning and it has like some
Mm.
stain on it. And I was
Oh
like,
no.
I was so frustrated. And I was like, okay, I'm not preparing people enough. So then I had to start working on the preparation. And I started to look for people who I could use to help me with that, like looking for stylists. Because I mean, I love fashion and I
Yep, I
appreciate
can see
style,
that in
but
your
I'm not
website.
a
It's
but I'm not a stylist. And I won't do that for some people, like for my clients. I won't go in and like, here is what you should wear. I can give you examples or like pull together maybe a little mood board with some ideas. But I believe that having a stylist there to really use their skill to help the person really stand out is very important. And I think all of these elements that you put into the picture, the lighting, the styling, the makeup, the hair, all of those things impact the photo. But
100%.
some people don't want the hair and the makeup, and that's
No,
fine. I don't that part I don't really mind so much because I want people to feel like themselves. But I will give them a heads up and say, make sure your foundation is matching, that your mascara is fresh because, mascara clumps and gets like on the skin. So these are just things that I will prepare them on. But the
just general
styling,
advice.
yeah.
Yeah, just
But the
general advice.
styling, I actually connect people with a stylist. Not everybody
Yeah,
goes for it because, of course, everybody's budget is different. But I try to prepare them, I think, ahead of time, with an email. I tell them, hey, if you're going to wear something, these are different ideas that you could wear, and I'll show some examples. But some people, I think the people that actually come to me kind of already have a lot of style,
hmm
and maybe
hmm
that's because of what I'm showing on my website and they can see that in themselves. So I think what you do put out actually is what you will attract in terms of the visuals that you're putting out there. So I think the people that do come to me, they like fashion and they are quite
Yeah,
fashionable people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely. I mean, I find that my biggest influence is what the people are wearing, and I can easily riff off into different directions depending on what somebody is wearing. It's that's part of my background, of course, being fashion and photographer and all that. But also, that's part of the story, isn't it? That's part of the visual narrative, what you're creating. It's a big part in personal branding, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. We got when someone steps in front of the camera, are you trying to capture who they really are, or do you help them become a slightly elevated version of themselves? Well, I think that's a pretty obvious answer there, but go for it anyhow.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
I don't know what it is. I feel like when I pick up the camera, I mean, in the beginning, like I start to get a little bit nervous myself, so I know that the person is nervous too. But when I pick up the camera, I just like it's just like an expectation that they're going to do well. I know it sounds strange, but in my mind, I'm like, they're going to do well. It's fine. But I also do talk a lot to them ahead of time, and I try to build as much trust with them before we even shoot, like during the consultation.
hmm
Um, they have access to me through WhatsApp, so we're constantly in touch.
Gotcha.
I want them to feel like they are in good hands, so that they already feel trust. But I do tell them ahead of time that, like, you know, think of yourself as a character and you can do
Mm,
anything in front of me and I won't care. Like, I want you to feel as free as you can because I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to just let you have fun. And this should be a fun
brilliant.
process. It shouldn't feel like something that you fear. And of course, not everybody goes along with that. But when they do get in front of the camera, I just try really hard to um, make them feel relaxed. And then I just tell them to move. And I think the more movement that people like do in front of the camera, I think they start to relax because they are already like doing things. So if I feel like somebody's very nervous before the shoot, I will pick um, action shots first, like where they're
Yes.
doing
Get them moving.
something,
Get the. That's right.
holding something,
Yep.
so that they
Definitely.
can start to warm up in front of the camera. And I usually just tell them these are just warm up photos. So don't wear your favorite outfit first. We're going to have this, these will be nice as well, but like just know that the first round you might be a little bit nervous and not as relaxed. So save your favorite outfit for like a little bit later into the shoot. And that's how I get people to, I guess, work with me. Yeah.
Do you work on location mainly or in the studio? Or do you have a preference?
I do both. It
Yep.
just depends on what the person wants. I think a lot of people like to choose the studio for some reason because it's secluded. But
Mm,
like sometimes I try to pick locations. They can shoot in their apartment if they like that. They can um, book like a hotel,
yep.
a room or
An
something.
Airbnb or
But
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the struggle that I have here in Sweden is that like the Airbnbs here are terrible, and we don't have like all these really cool peer spaces like the US has. So I've
No,
had to
that's
kind
right.
of work with
Yes.
what I have and what I have access to. So yeah, I mean, I will go to hotel lobbies, and some people will be fine with it, and some people won't be fine with it. And you just like, I'm like, okay, maybe we have like 5 minutes here before somebody says something, but I will ask ahead of time,
Yeah, of
if it's
course.
okay if we can shoot here. I mean, I'll message them like not the day of, but trying to make sure that we have a plan in place so we can actually make sure we can shoot there. But I will sometimes shoot in my own apartment, which people have asked for. And yeah, so I shoot in different places. And
You
when
do
I
shoot in different
do,
places.
I try to keep it so limited I don't like to bring a bunch of gear. I don't like to bring a big umbrella. I just
You
have
don't.
I have a Profoto A1 and I
Oh,
bring
yep.
it with me and I
Yep.
use the natural light and then I fill with the flash.
Okay.
So I'm really like working as light as possible because I think all of that is super intimidating for people who are wanting to be in public and they don't want to call a lot of attention to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm working as light as possible. But even if I'm shooting on location, I mean, sometimes I'll like need to use the umbrella if it's really dark. And in Sweden, we only have like a small window of
Of course.
time to
I
do
think you're
brand
probably
shoots.
worse than we are in the UK,
Oh,
really,
it's
with the
so
light, I would
hard. It
imagine.
really
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
I think now things are starting to pick up in April
Yep.
in terms of brand photography, and it will go until about October. And then November it starts to get really dark. So if anybody really wants that natural light look, then we only have a small window because it gets dark
That's
like
interesting.
in November. It's like
Yeah.
I think around 3 o'clock it's dark, so we don't really have
Wow.
that much light, and then
Yeah.
it's mostly gray. We had like the grayest winter in December. Yeah, it was horrible. So as a brand
It's a
photographer,
challenge.
I have a
It's
small
a
window,
challenge.
so that's why I do shoot other kinds of work as well
What
to
do you do
fill
then,
in for
Jess?
those times.
What do you do in
I
those
do a lot
times
of
then?
like corporate stuff. So I'll go
Yeah.
in and
Yeah.
I work a lot with Electrolux. So I do a lot of stuff with them. And they actually ask a lot for like brand photography for their clients, but I can actually make it look a little bit more corporate with like lighting and flash.
And that's where you bring in the
Um,
lighting. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's when I'll do the lighting. But like most people who are building a personal brand, not all want like the natural light. Some people want like that high key flash, that looks a little bit different.
Well,
So
sorry, just to butt in there, I do notice on your website that you are actually using that it was that 90s flash that I remember using,
yeah,
which is basically just a small flash in your camera. It's very easy. And with film, it looked very cool. And that's come back in fashion. And I noticed you're using that on your website, that very high contrast look. It looks good.
yeah, yeah. No, I think the key is to be playful and
Yep.
um, you know, allow yourself to experiment. If you get a client who's really like excited to try those things, I think that's also why I did a lot of self portraits because or you can also do styled photos like get a model or something, but
Hmm.
I practice on myself because
Yeah.
I'm also using those photos for my social media. So I think for me, I can actually be an example of what it's like to do something different, to show people that you don't always have to stay with the norm.
Exactly.
So, I
That's a
mean,
great point.
yeah, so I shoot my own self portraits and I experiment a lot. And I think that's the key to like having like photos that are different that maybe somebody else hasn't tried out yet.
Cool.
And but that's me. So not everybody's going to be like me, like, and wanting to do that. But for me, I've never been the kind of person that can like stay still. Like I need to try new things in order to be challenged. And I do like a challenge. So yeah, I will do things that are, testing on myself, or I find somebody and I say, "Hey, I like what you're doing. I have an idea. Would you mind if we could do a collaboration?" And then that way I get to build a portfolio piece and they
Yeah.
get something as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So that way I can actually use that as like an example of what's possible. So, yeah.
Okay, let's get back to the questions. Let's talk about campaign and riffing off what you just said. Let's talk about campaign thinking versus like one-off content. Do you see personal brand photography as ongoing content creation, or more as building a campaign style asset that gets strategically used over time?
Okay, that's a big question. So I think of content creation as a way to stay up to date in front of your potential clients.
Yeah,
If
for sure.
you want to launch, let's say, a
Yep.
service, or let's say, I don't know, I'm just making this up. Like a lot of people do mini sessions, right? So you can think of it as a launch. And launching is basically a buildup of information for a long period of time, trying to get people to know that this is coming, that I am offering this session and it's going to be this day. But some
Hmm.
people need to be warmed up. So you have like what is called a launch, and you continue to talk about this thing over and over and over until you're like blue in the
Yep.
face.
Yep.
Most people don't do that. People are too scared to sell. People are too afraid to talk about their services over and over again. Oh, I'm being too salesy. Oh gosh, can't I shut up? Half the people don't see it. Most of the time they're like, oh, I missed it. Can I still get in? So what we
Yeah,
think we're talking about too much, we're actually probably not talking enough about. So
that's
I think of
interesting.
content creation as something that's, you should be doing that for your business, for your photography business, but in general, like our clients should be too. And so that's why I said, like, as a photographer, working as a brand photographer, you should know how to do this stuff. This is very important
Yeah.
because your clients are doing this. We need to understand what they need. So some people may not just need a brand shoot, they might need something to help them launch a new service or a new
Yep.
thing coming up. And they want the photos to match what that's about. It's not even about your website, it's about that one thing.
Very
So,
specific. Yeah.
yeah. And so our clients need us for multiple things. So I do a lot of content creation for some of my clients as well. So in a way, like I've learned to be a content creator, marketer. Like a lot of this stuff just kind of came with time, but I've been doing this now for about 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been a while. Um, and either you like it or you don't. So for me, it's really fun. And I love talking about this stuff. So yeah, I think
I
marketing
mean,
your business is super important.
we spoke about this before the show, off air, as it were, um, and how I was totally impressed by how much content you do put out and your newsletter, and you've got so much going on. Can you just give us some advice to our listeners about how they get the work? I mean, I find it difficult to talk about marketing. You're so good at talking about it. How can photographers find work? What's the best way that you found?
Well, I used to try to put flyers on light
Hmm.
posts, and that didn't work. So I came a long way from that time period. But now it's really just about showing people how you can help them, talking about your services,
Hmm.
Not saying here, buy from me, but like show people. And in the beginning, if you're just starting, it is a bit trickier, right? Because you don't have that portfolio. But I would say invest in somebody to come and create content for you and use that content over and over. It doesn't matter if it's the same
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
and just show them like the result of the outcome. So show them the behind the scenes, show them the outcome, talk about your services and how you help people, how you'll guide them, what makes you different than the person that's another brand photographer. So it's about coming up with different ways to say what you do in multiple different ways.
Gotcha.
And you can just turn that one piece of content into other ways of doing it. You can use a reel, you can use
Yeah.
carousel posts, you can still use
Yes.
the same information. And then I use LinkedIn, I use TikTok, not all the time, and I
Okay.
use mostly Instagram, and then
Oh,
blogging.
really? That's the bit. That's where you put most of your eggs are in that basket, the Instagram
Yeah, and
basket.
Instagram. And then I do blog. So how do I come up with all this info? When I'm cleaning the house or when I'm on a walk, I get hit with ideas. And I think um, if I've listened to a podcast and I get an idea, I'm like, ooh, I pause and I type, like talking to my notes app, and I'll just riff on what idea came to me or how I could talk about something. And then either I'll clean it up or I'll just put it into Chat GPT, or you can put it
Hmm.
into whatever AI you want to use now.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I just say, can you just make this sound better, like refined, like so it
Yes.
doesn't feel like a
Yes.
mess. And then I'll just use that. And that's how I started to really just churn out content. And so it's a lot of listening and reacting. But I think as a brand, a personal brand, it's really about having opinions and a voice and being a leader in some way. And I
Yeah.
think that's
How do
the
you be, so,
hardest part when you're building a personal
yes. Can
brand.
I press you on that? How do you become a leader in the personal branding space? How do you do that? You obviously achieved it. You've been doing it for a long while.
Um, I don't know. It's hard to say that
It's a
about
hard one. Yes.
yourself. Because I don't know if I'm a leader. I'm just, I guess for me, I started to find my own voice with time, because when I first started building my personal brand, I had so much I wanted to say, but I was too afraid to say it. Like my perspective of what I think about
Right.
brand photography was too scary to tell people. Like a lot of people say niching down, you should niche down as a photographer. I'm like, why? Why? When
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
come to you and they came to you for your family photos and your wedding, uh, and they say, "Hey, I started a business. Can you photograph me?" Why would I want to like close the doors to these different opportunities? So I don't think it's about niching down. But I'm going to go on a tangent and go off. But what I'm saying is like having a voice and actually trusting that you have an opinion, and knowing that what you're saying is might piss somebody off or offend somebody, or somebody might agree with me. And that's the whole
Yeah.
point, is to do that. But in the beginning, I was too afraid to do any of that. But I think as time went on, I started to develop that, but that was through practice. And I think having a podcast allowed me to play with that and not be afraid. And now I feel
That's
enough
interesting.
confidence in myself to actually speak what I think about the industry. So it took different steps and levels to get there. So I don't know if I would say I'm a leader. I'm just saying like I'm owning my own personal voice
I
now.
think you've you've hit the nail on the head there, Jay. You basically got to put the work in. And if you put the work in and you build up your confidence by putting that work in and taking knockbacks and moving forward, etc., etc. That's what gives you that voice and that stronger voice, isn't it? Not just
Yeah.
about your content, but also photographically as well. It's a
Yeah.
we sort. I'm sort of gone off piste a little bit here, but we spoke at the beginning of the show about the photography is a difficult thing to get into, branding photography in particular. You've got to put the work in. It's not you can it's very easy to follow the flock and just do what everybody else does, but to find your own voice takes time.
Yeah, it does. And I think if you just keep practicing what your
Yep.
opinions are and take like a stance on what you think, I think more people will feel that and like relate to you, and that's how you start to connect with other people that actually value what you have to say. So I guess, yeah, going back to, am I a leader? I don't know if I am. I'm just kind of starting to step into my own opinions and trust that, but it took me a long time.
Yeah, it does
So
take.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's. I think that's been you've been very very candid, and let's just wrap it up then with that. What do you think is coming next in branding photography, in personal branding
Oh,
photography?
oh, that's a tough one. I mean, it's changing so much. In the
Yes,
beginning, like in 2016, it was one kind of look, very clean lighting, people holding coffee mugs
yes,
and
yes,
sitting on the sofa. And I get it. We all had to start from some sort of base,
yes.
and then people started to evolve it, and it's gotten much more interesting, to be honest. Like, I'm seeing really interesting shoots coming out now that are sometimes not even, they don't have anything to do with like personal branding, like style photography. It's just a feeling or a mood. So I think there will be different phases of different looks that will come in and come and go, but it's hard to say if there's like one thing right now. But I do see a lot of more conceptual brand shoots at this time
I
really
think you're right. I think it's going to become more
happening.
conceptual, definitely. More
Yeah.
avant-garde, more open. I think we're going to see more darker, maybe a bit moodier, maybe photographs taken in the evening or at night time, to give that vibe
Yeah.
as well. Or yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that are possible, and I think that's really cool because
yes,
I I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do personal branding. I think it's can be anything, and that's the cool part about like being a creative, is that like, don't limit yourself. Don't think that I have to shoot brand photography in this way. If you like shooting in a certain way that's, very unique and different, use that to your advantage, because there's always somebody out there that wants something from somebody.
I
And when they
agree.
see it, they will know.
Yeah,
Um, for instance, I have a podcast called the Elevate Podcast,
yes,
and I started that for entrepreneurs, and I was just sharing stories. My first podcast image cover was quite bad, but I just threw it together. But with time, I started to figure out like, okay, I know what I want this to feel like. I want it to look like this. And so I found this girl in Stockholm that is a fashion photographer, and she only does like beauty and all this stuff that's more like fashion. And I saw a photo that she made, and I was like, this is exactly the way I want this image to look. It has nothing to do with being in a space or anything. It's just the way the lighting was. And it gave that feeling and emotion of like what I wanted the podcast to evoke for people when they listen to it. And that's really what it was about, just a feeling. It wasn't a literal thing. It was just me smiling. But I had the lighting, the way I wanted it to look. I wanted the styling, the makeup, all of that. So it was really just about the feeling. So it doesn't always have to be literal of like what we're doing for
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's hard to speak it without, because I'm more of a visual translator. So I like to use examples when I'm like talking about stuff so I can show people what I mean. But there's ways to show what people do or the feeling that people can have when they see your pictures. There's like a way to do that where it's not just the literal
Yeah,
translation.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
digging deep. You're digging deeper. Jez, unfortunately, we're sort of running about out of time here. How can our listeners find out a little bit more about you?
Yeah, you can find me at jessicahanlon.com. That's my
Hmm.
website. And all of this information is there, like my podcasts and stuff. I also have a secret podcast for photographers who want to work on finding their visual edge. So I
Oh,
have that as well.
oh,
And
okay.
that's on my website. So you can find me at Jessica Hanlon Photography on Instagram.
Yes.
And I have all that info in there as well. So you can find those things.
And you've got some workshops coming up, I believe. Did I read that on your website?
Yeah, so I'm hosting a online workshop for brand photographers, and this is really more about like the concepting part of brand photography and how to like lead a brand shoot from the beginning to end.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people struggle with this part. I actually have a course called Break into Brand Photography. And when they take that course, they get into this part of like creating concepts and ideas. But I felt like, some people don't want to buy a full course. So I was like, let's just do the workshop, which is actually around leading the shoot, coming up with concepts and translating ideas. And so there I'll be more visual and show people examples of what I mean.
Cool.
But it's going to be a workshop where I'm showing people how I do it, and I'm giving them access to how I'm running that side of my photography.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Jex. Thanks for being part of our show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a really fun conversation.
Nice one. Thank you.